Brittany Ryder, Practical Task 3. Today we're going to be going over incident and illness reports.
Yep.
But before we start, the facilities are that way if you ever need the bathroom.
Okay.
Breaks, there isn't a scheduled break, but if you feel like you need one, just let me know and we can have 10-15 minutes.
Amazing.
We'll be covering how to write an incident, injury or illness report.
Yep.
And evacuation point is up there on the grass if there were to be an emergency while we're in this lesson.
Okay, awesome.
First we're going to cover incident reports. So do you know what an incident report might be?
No.
No? Not yet?
No, not yet.
Okay. So an incident report is a way to document any incidents or accidents that may happen to children in our care.
Yep.
By writing a report, we're able to communicate the illness or incident to the child's family in a timely and professional manner, as well as keep the record as evidence of any first aid given.
Okay.
So it's basically a way to, I guess, report an incident, illness or an accident in your service
And
to
help,
cover
like,
us and cover the parents.
Help keep it as documentation.
That's right. So
if
we'll be able
anything
to add the report to the child's file.
Yep.
So if anything comes up in the future, we can say, well, we've done this, this, and this, and this is what's happened.
Okay, awesome.
Why do we write incident reports? We write these reports as a way to keep record of any incidents that may happen within the service. It also allows parents to keep record of any incidents that may occur while their child is receiving care.
Okay.
Documenting incidents allows educators and families to refer to the reports made if they need to at a later date. And we're going to watch a video next too.
Awesome.
Do you have any questions so far?
No, not yet.
Yeah. So basically, an incident report is just like you document what's happened.
Say if a child's fallen over or has come up with an illness at work or during the day, we then fill out an incident or illness report,
Mm-hmm.
and then that report is a way for us to tell the parents what's happened and exactly frame of what's happened, what we've done to look after them.
That's right.
And then we can also use that report to keep documentation in case the parent comes back in a later date and says, well, you didn't do this right. Is that correct?
That's right. And we can say, well, you signed the report
Yep.
and this is what we've done.
Okay, awesome.
So now this is a video just kind of explaining the different reports and how to fill them out.
Yep.
And then we'll move on to the next
Okay,
slide.
awesome.
As a licensed childcare provider, you are required to submit reports to community care licensing so that the records of your business are always current. While center and home-based providers share most of the same reporting requirements, some requirements and forms are specific to each type of license. Here, we'll review what information you'll need to report, how you'll provide it, and why it's in your best interest to do so.
Licensed childcare providers must make sure that any reports required by licensing are current, accurate, and submitted in a timely fashion.
These reports enable us to stay up to date with any changes that may have occurred at your facility. Also, reports of unusual incidents enable us to protect the health and safety of children in care, as well as the larger community.
Meeting reporting requirements is part of your partnership with us and makes it possible for us to help you serve children and families.
What reports am I required to submit to licensing? There are two types of reports. One type is unusual incidents. These reports are required of both family childcare homes and centers. Some examples of unusual incidents that must be reported include outbreaks of communicable diseases, such as mumps or measles, suspect child abuse. Also, incidents that put children in danger, such as their wandering away from the facility unattended, and injuries to children that require medical intervention. The other type of report is related to the overall operation of your facility, such as personnel changes, address changes, and modifications to your facility. Some reports are specific to family childcare homes, and others are specific to childcare centers. For example, family childcare providers must report information about any adult moving into or out of the home where the facility is operated. Childcare centers must report certain personnel issues, such as the appointment of a new facility director and changes in board membership. How and when should I file these reports? Because of their nature, unusual incident reports must be filed by phone and in writing. Phone reports must be made no later than the department's next working day following the event. A completed written report describing the incident in detail must be received by licensing, either by mail or fax, within 7 days of the event. Reports that involve personnel changes must be reported to licensing within 10 days of making the change. All reporting forms are available on the Community Care Licensing website. It's recommended that you download the forms that are applicable to your facility and print multiple copies to keep on file for ready access. Any adult working at your facility can file a report, but it is the licensee's responsibility to ensure the report was filed with the department. Am I required to file reports with agencies other than Community Care Licensing? Some events must be reported to more than one.
The rest isn't relevant to us. The
Okay.
rest is about CCS, and we don't need to listen to that.
Okay.
Next is an illness report. So that was an incident report. An incident report is like an incident that happens.
Yep.
So if a child was to leave the centre, that would be an incident.
Unattended.
Unattended.
Yep.
Or if suspected abuse, that
Yep.
would be an incident. An accident report or injury report
Mhm.
is if they were to fall over, scrape
Scrape
their
the
leg,
knee.
or
Okay.
bump
Okay.
their head. And an illness report is obviously.
Could an incident
illness.
also be something coming up to them at the fence,
That's right.
talking
like a dog
to them,
or a person.
or a dog? Okay. Awesome.
That's right.
And injury and accident are more things that actually happen
To
to
the
them.
child. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So that was incident report. So that now we're going to cover illness report.
Yep.
So similar to an incident or an accident report, illness reports allow educators and management to keep record of children who have become unwell while in a centre's care.
Mm-hmm.
So if they develop a rash, we document that so that if the rash worsens at home, the families can kind of refer back to the report and see what
How
symptoms
first,
were,
when it
how-
first started.
how we responded to it, if we responded to it.
Yep.
And then if it gets worse, we can then exclude them from care, which
Yep.
we'll include in the incident, the illness report.
Okay.
If Panadol is administered, because sometimes children develop temperatures at school,
Mhm.
and then they have to be sent home. If Panadol is administered or a child has a temperature, families are able to keep track of the amount of Panadol given, as well as the temperature spikes or falls once the child has been collected from care.
Okay.
So, an illness report contains when the child began to feel unwell, so leading up to the child getting sick, what we noticed, what actions were taken once educators were aware. So we might hug the child and they might feel warm, so then we take their temperature. If it's a temperature over 38 degrees, they're then sent home.
Mm-hmm.
If medication is given, so if there is a temperature, we call the families and say, hey, your child needs to be collected, they've got a temperature of 38 or more. Would you like us to give Panadol at the service, or do you want to give that at home?
Okay.
And if they say at the service, we'll give Panadol and document how much and the time.
Yep.
So that when the child goes home, the family doesn't then give them Panadol too, and then they've had an overdose of Panadol.
Okay.
So the family kind of refers back to see when they can give them their next amount.
Mm-hmm.
And any exclusion periods that may be given. Some services have exclusion periods, so if they've had a temperature at school, they can't return for 48 hours.
Okay.
So if they have a temperature on Tuesday at 11 o'clock, they then can't come back till Thursday at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
So that they're not spreading what they
Yes,
have, just
of
in case
course.
it's contagious.
Of course.
And what is an illness report? An illness report is made when a child falls ill while in a centre's care. Educators fill this form out and send it to the child's parents either via like an iPad, like an electronic report,
Yep.
or on a physical piece of paper, which the parent can then sign when they come
Yep.
to collect their child. These forms are made by each individual centre. Each service may have their own policy or procedure about creating the reports, as well as when, why, and how.
So each centre will have a different style of how
That's
it's
right.
filled out.
Like
Okay.
some centres might have an app where they fill it out and send it off to the family and they can sign it on their phone.
Yep.
Some centres might have a physical document and
Yep.
then they can photocopy it, send one home with the family and then keep one at
Okay.
the service. It just depends on what the service prefers.
Yep.
So an incident or accident report. We're going to look at the policy
Mm-hmm.
of each of the incident, accident and illness reports.
Okay.
So what does the policy contain? Why is it important to have policies for these types of reports, and what are they used for? We're going to look at this now and kind of go through the questions on the slide. So first is signs and symptoms of illness. We're just going to go through it briefly because it is quite a big document.
Yep.
So first, identifying signs of illness. Early childhood educators and management are not doctors and are unable to diagnose an illness or disease. To ensure the symptoms are not infectious and to minimize the spread of infection, medical advice may be required to ensure a safe and healthy environment.
Mm-hmm.
So if a child comes to the centre and they've got a rash, we'll ask the child to be removed, go to the doctors, get a clearance, and then they can come back just to ensure the rash isn't contagious, because we aren't,
Doctors.
like, you're not going to be a qualified doctor. We can't say that rash is contagious
Of
or
course.
isn't.
Of
So
course.
the family will have to come collect the child, take them to the doctor,
Yep.
and then the doctor can then provide a medical.
And at least we
report.
have the medical
That's
certificate
right.
on file saying that it's not.
That's right.
Okay.
This is COVID, so we won't read through that. Symptoms indicating illness may include behaviour that is unusual. So if a child is usually happy and playing and they are reserved and kind of sitting down, that's kind of, you might monitor that a bit.
Yep.
High temperatures or fevers, loose bowels. With loose bowels, there is usually a procedure with that.
Mm-hmm.
So if a child does more than 3 loose bowel movements, they're then sent home because that's a sign of diarrhea, which
Okay.
is really contagious. So if they do 3 loose, they're usually sent home, but that could be different from centre to centre.
Okay.
Some might do 2, some might only do 1. If it's loose, they have to go straight away.
Yep.
Just
Depends.
on the centre, yeah.
Yep.
Feces that are grey, pale, or contain blood. Vomiting, discharge from the eyes or ears, that could be a sign of concussion or even conjunctivitis.
Mm-hmm.
Skin that displays rashes, blisters, spots, or weeping sores, that could be hand, foot, and mouth, which is also really contagious. So
Yep.
they need a clearance before they can come back to school.
Right.
Loss of appetite, dark urine, headaches, stiff muscles, continuous scratching of scalp or skin, that could be either nits or even scabies. Like,
Mhm.
again, we don't know, we're not doctors. Difficulty in swallowing or a sore throat, could
Mhm.
obviously be a sore throat. Difficulty breathing or a stiff neck, and sensitivity to sunlight, like they might have a headache, they might not be able to move their neck properly.
Yep.
Usually if a child is unwell or unable to participate in normal activities, we send a phone call home.
Yep.
They're excluded from the centre for 24 hours if they have a temperature or fever or
Mhm.
vomiting. If they have a diarrhea, they need to stay out of the service for 48 hours because that's a bit.
Bit more contagious.
Yeah, that's
and-
right.
Right. Okay.
If they have medication at home, like if a parent gives their child Panadol before coming to school,
Yep.
they can come to school, but we let them know that after 4 hours, if we check the temperature and it's high, you will need to come and collect your child because
Okay.
they have a temperature.
Yep.
But because they aren't displaying the temperature yet, they won't go home.
Okay.
If they have started a course of antibiotics, they need to be at home for 24 hours just to make sure that they're okay to come to school.
Yep.
Because sometimes antibiotics can have like symptoms.
Right.
Have a contagious infectious disease, obviously can't come to school,
Mm-hmm.
or have been in contact with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19. That's kind of irrelevant now because
Yes.
we all have the vaccination. If a child has a high temperature or fever, they can't come to school, and that is anything above 38.
Yep.
So 38 and above have to go home straight away or can't come to school. If a child has a temperature of 37.5, we usually give a call home just to let them know, like, you don't have to come now, but we're going to be monitoring your child, and if they do reach 38, someone will have to come and collect them. So just letting you know, maybe call around and see if someone can come grab them if you can't, just like a courtesy call.
Yep.
Methods to reduce a child's fever: encourage them to drink water and kind of remove any jumpers, socks, long pants, kind of put them in cooler clothes just to help them regulate their temperature a bit more.
Yep.
Diarrhea and vomiting, which is gastro. Gastro is a general term for an illness or digestive system. Typical symptoms include cramps, diarrhea, vomiting, and in many cases, it does not need treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, you kind of just
Let it run
it
its
goes
course.
away.
Yep.
Yeah. If a child does have gastro in your centre, you notify management, and they'll kind of send out like a form to parents just to let them know, like, hey, we've got gastro at the moment in our service.
Yep.
Just, if you want to bring your children, you can, but just be aware.
Be aware. Mm-hmm.
Children that have diarrhea or vomiting will be asked to stay away from the service for 48 hours. So, as again, if they have it on Tuesday, they can't come back till Thursday.
Yep.
Some examples of infectious diseases could be viruses, shingles, bacterial toxins, and just gastro. Gastro is the main one in childcare though, because it's so contagious.
Mm-hmm.
Non-infectious causes or just like non-infectious diseases could be antibiotics, because that can bring on like sickness.
Yep.
Chemical exposure, introducing solid foods to children, sometimes that might make them
A bit unwell.
Yeah.
Type deal. Yep.
especially if they've gone from just bottles to now
Yep.
eating, it might make their tummies a bit upset. Or anxiety or emotional stress, like if they're crying because their families have gone home,
Mhm.
they're obviously not sick, they're just
Upset.
and obviously cold and flu. Cold and flu is kind of subject to change, like if it's they've got people reading snot, they're not eating, they're rubbing their eyes, they're tired,
Yep.
you might send them home, but if they're sneezing and their snot's clear, you won't really send them home.
Right.
It just depends on your centre's policy.
Yep. At the end of the day, it always comes back to the centre's policy that you're working at.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's it for illness. Now we're going to move on to serious injury, incident, or trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So in the event of any child, educator, or staff in the service, in the event of any child, educator, staff, volunteer, or contractor having an accident at the service, an educator who has a first aid certificate will attend to the person immediately.
Mm-hmm.
So if an educator falls, or a volunteer falls, or a child falls, usually all educators within the service will have their first aid. So anyone will kind of just go over and support.
Yep.
Any workplace incident, injury, or trauma will be investigated and records kept as per WHS legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Incident, injury, trauma, and illness report. An incident, injury, trauma, and illness record contains details of any incident, injury, trauma, or illness that occurs while the child is being educated and cared for at the service.
Yep.
This record will include the name and age of the child, circumstances leading to the incident, injury, or illness, time and date that it's occurred,
Yep.
details of any illness which becomes apparent while the child is being cared for, details of the action taken by the educator, including any medication administered or first aid.
Yep.
Details of any person who witnessed the incident, names of any person the educator notified or attempted to notify, like if it's above the shoulders, you'll call home, like if they hit their head or bite their tongue,
Mm-hmm.
you'll call home, whereas if it's just a scrape, you kind of
You don't use.
you write the report, take a photo, and that's them being notified.
Right. Okay.
Signature of the person making the entry and the time of date and date the record was made. So whoever has witnessed it will sign it. Whoever made the report signs it, and then parents also sign it.
Okay.
Missing or unaccounted for child, this would be an incident.
Mm-hmm.
At all times, reasonable precautions and adequate supervision is provided to ensure children are protected from harm or hazards. However, if a child appears to be missing or unaccounted for, removed from the service premises that breaches the national regulations, or is mistakenly locked in or locked out of any part of the service, a serious incident notification must be made to the regulatory authority.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to notify the department and also fill out a report if the child is missing, has escaped, or you can't find them.
Right.
A child may only leave the service in the care of a parent, an authorised nominee named in the child's enrolment record, so like a grandparent if they're on the record, or a person authorised by a parent or nominee because the child requires medical, hospital, or ambulance care or other emergency. So if a child is sick at care and no one on the list can pick the child up, the parent will be called and they can give verbal permission.
Okay.
for the child to be picked up, and then next time the parents are in the care, they'll just sign that off.
Okay.
A child might only leave the service. I just read that. Educators ensure that the attendance record is regularly cross-checked to ensure all children assigned into the service and are accounted for. So
Yep.
just making like randomly marking the roll just to make sure
No
everyone's
one left
there.
or anything like that. Yep.
children are supervised at all times, and visitors to the service are not left alone with any children at any time. So basically, a child should never be unaccounted for, because
Yes.
if they're being supervised adequately and the roles are being marked, there's no reason a child should go missing.
Exactly.
Should an incident occur where a child is missing from the service, educators and the nominated supervisor will attempt to locate the child immediately by contacting a thorough search of the service, cross-checking the attendance records to ensure that the child hasn't been collected by an unauthorized person.
Yep.
If the child is not located within a 10-minute period, emergency services will be contacted, and the approved provider will notify the parent or guardian,
Amazing.
which would be a very hard conversation to have,
Yes, it
obviously. Continue to search for the missing child until emergency services arrive, while providing supervision for all other children in care. So just because a child's missing doesn't mean all other 20 kids are not supervised. Obviously, some educators will stay with the children,
Yep.
while others will continue to look. Provide information to police such as the child's name, age and appearance by providing a photo, and details of where the child was last sighted. The approved provider is responsible for notifying the regulatory authority of a serious incident within the 24 hours of the incident occurring. So that's like an incident. This is more accidents now. So
Yep.
a head injury. It is common for children to bump their heads during everyday play. However, it is difficult to determine whether the injury is serious or not. Therefore, any knock to the head is considered a head injury, because we're not doctors again.
Exactly.
Like, we might think it's minor, but then they have headaches, they have fluid from the ear, it could be like a concussion, or it could just be a small hit.
Yep.
So every hit is considered a head injury. In the event of any head injury, the first aid officer will assess the child, apply an ice pack, and notify the parents and all guardians, just to let them know that they've hit the head, and it's then up to them if they want to come and collect their child.
Yep.
Or if they would like them to just stay, and then if anything happens, it's kind of up to them. Like,
Okay.
you had the option to come and collect your child, you chose not to. This is now what's happened.
Okay. And that would all be within the report.
That will all
as
be in
well.
the report.
Yes.
Like, we notified the parent decided not to collect their child.
Will I be able to take this booklet home with me
Of
today?
course you can.
Thank you.
This will probably help with your studies and stuff too.
Yep.
Next is procedure. This is the procedure in the event of a serious incident, illness, or injury, which is what we need to then fill out these, which we'll
Okay.
do next.
Yep.
So, in incident or injury management, first you'll notify your nominated supervisor or director, and then they will ensure the safety of themselves and others. Attend to the child immediately. Assess whether further medical attention is required, like hospital or medical assistance.
Yep.
Contact emergency services for an ambulance if further medical attention is required.
Yep.
Administer first aid. Ensure injured child is reassured that they're okay and mummy and daddy are coming, kind of
Of
thing.
course.
If the incident or illness involves asthma or anaphylaxis, refer to the child's medical management plan. So each child that has an allergy has a plan that we refer to. So
Yes.
if we notice that they are having like a allergic response, we can then refer to the plan and we'll follow what that says.
Of course.
Notify parents or nominated authorized person to inform them that an ambulance has been called, and request them to either come immediately to the service or meet the ambulance at the hospital.
Yep.
Remain with the child until the ambulance arrives, obviously. Ensure any medical conditions or history is readily available for the emergency service. Like, if, say, the child's allergic to penicillin, we'll let them know so that they don't give the child.
And that would be on the child's card.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
their medical
Report. Yep.
Action plans should provide guidance of first aid responses in an emergency as provided by the child's doctor. And notify regulatory authority of any serious incident within 24 hours.
Yep.
That's kind of all you need to know from that page. That's kind of it. That's how the procedure goes. If
Okay.
it's really, really serious, you'll let your director know, and they'll kind of
Jump in and
jump
take
in.
over.
Like if the child's split their head open and there's blood everywhere,
Yep.
you'll let your director know. Whereas if they've just fallen and scraped their knee,
Yep.
you won't do that.
So
it's more so the serious.
More serious an injury, the higher up you work your way within
That's right.
the centre.
That's right.
Okay.
So now we're going to complete 3 reports using scenarios.
Good.
So in scenario 1, can you read that out?
I can. A child wakes up from their afternoon nap feeling quite warm. Educators know children will sometimes wake up feeling warm, so give the child 5 minutes to wake up and cool down. After 5 minutes, they feel the child's head once again, but they still feel warm. Due to this, they take the child's temperature. The results come back and the child has a temperature of 38.5 degrees. The educators contact the parent and they give approval to administer Panadol and will collect their child as soon as possible. Would this require an illness, incident or accident report? This would require an illness report.
That's right. So now using that information, we're going to fill out an illness report.
Yep.
So on this, the child's name, your name, sorry. So
Yep.
you'll fill out your name, your position and the service's name. So we'll just make up the service's name. Your role will just be educator. And for service name, just put childcare. This is just a practice one. So the date the record was made, just put today's date, which is, I think it's the 21st of the 4th. And the time is 12:12 p.m. Good job. Now the child's name, we can just make up a name.
John Henry. Date of birth 27th, 8th.
Probably 2020. Because that would make them 5.
Age 5.
And obviously a male. So what's the next question?
Incident, injury, trauma, illness details.
So you would circle illness, because that's what we're doing. This was for their details and when we're filling out the report, but that necessarily isn't the time that the incident happened, because obviously when an incident happens you're going to attend to the child
Yes,
first.
obviously. So
And then that... then
yeah,
you
so
just-
the time this would have taken place could have been at
half an hour ago.
11:30.
Yeah. So it's obviously it's the same date and
Yep.
then just change the time.
Because obviously you fill the report out when you have
A second.
a second to
And the
fill it
child's
after
in.
everything is
That's
okay
right.
and the child is okay.
So it might be maybe 11:30 that this happened. Good job. Location of service. Just put NA for that. We don't really need to put the location of service unless this was an incident.
Yep.
So
Location of would be in the nap room.
that's right.
Name of person who witnessed the incident. Just say you, for example.
And then I'll sign it and put the date.
At the time of the incident, when I do see that the child does have a temperature, do I call one of my other educators over just to double
yeah,
check?
that would be the witness.
Okay. Yep.
So, And now you will put the details
Of what happened.
which is the scenario. You
Yeah.
don't have to write it word for word, but
Yep.
kind of just summarize that
Okay.
they were hot, you felt them, let them cool down, gave them time to wake up, and then they were still hot.
We said John woke up from his nap feeling warm. After giving him 5 minutes to relax and cool down, he still felt warm to the touch. After taking his temperature and seeing it was 38.5 degrees, I contacted his parents, who approved the administering of Panadol and confirmed they were coming to pick him up.
Good job. Just remember to circle illness as well.
Yep.
That's all. Well done. Next, what does that say?
Circumstances leading to the incident, injury, trauma / illness include any apparent symptoms. Would I circle illness again?
Yep.
In this scenario?
So circumstances would just be child woke up with temperature.
Okay. Circumstances if child appeared to be missing or otherwise unaccounted for.
That would be NA.
NA. Circumstances of child, NA again,
Mm-hmm.
taken or removed. So you're going to have to fill out whatever section matters to you.
That relates, yeah.
Okay. Nature of injury, trauma, illness.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything there that says temperature? I can see one on the right hand side.
High temperature,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it.
That's it. So you wouldn't
Action
circle,
taken.
you wouldn't circle anything because obviously it's
There's
just
nothing
a high temp.
on his body. Yep.
So action taken would be
Contacting-
parents were called and
Yep.
gave permission for Panadol. And now you'd write Panadol and put 2 dots. Now down here you'd write time.
Down the bottom here.
Yep, just all up here.
Yep.
So you need to write time and amount. Time and then dot dot.
Would be 11:30.
That's right.
Or
And then AM. And then amount would be a 5-year-old can have anywhere between 10 and 11 mils of Panadol, depending on their weight. So just say 10.5. 10.5 mils.
did emergency services attend? No. Time emergency services with contact NA.
Just put NA, that's right.
Time emergency services arrived NA. Was medical attention sought from a registered practitioner's hospital? No. NA. Have any steps been taken to prevent, minimise this incident in the future?
That would be NA, only because that's usually used for accidents. So if a child, say, tripped over something in the yard,
Yep.
you could just say remove this from the yard or ensure it's supervised at all times.
Okay. Parent slash guardian slash carer.
So that's what the parent would fill
And
out.
then parent would then
And
fill
then
this section out.
your director would fill that out just
Yep.
to say that they were notified.
Yep.
And then that's usually just left. The
Okay.
parent will then sign that when they pick the child up.
Yep.
And that's it.
And that's a report done.
That's the report done. This is all
Awesome.
done when the parent comes.
Okay.
So now we're going to move on to the next scenario.
Would you like my... Oh, my name's already on.
Yep.
So. Scenario 2. A child within your service is playing on the monkey bars with one of their peers. As they reach their arm out to grab the next run, they slip, causing them to fall to the grass below. The supervisor and educator helps the child up and assesses them in order to identify any visible abrasions. When the child moves their right arm, the educator can tell that it is quite painful due to the child's reaction. The educator takes the child inside and encourages them to keep their arms still and elevated while she notifies her superior of the incident. The supervisor then calls the child's parents to come and collect their child immediately as their child appears to have broken their arm. Will this require illness, incident, or accident? This would be an accident report.
That's right. So just the same thing.
Yep. This person could be 20 months, 6, 2020, 5 again. This is an injury.
Injury. In the 21st, yeah. 29th. Did you do?
No, 21st. Oh, sorry.
Right, okay.
21st. This was done at 11 o'clock. Location of service NA.
Yeah,
Location of injury.
no.
Just say playground.
And monkey bars. Playground plus monkey bars.
And person who witnessed. If I could please get your signature.
what I saw hand.
Yes.
What did you write?
John, whilst playing on the monkey bars, fell off whilst reaching for another run, landing on the ground hard. Whilst giving him a check over, I noticed his arm was giving him pain by his reactions. I took him inside, contacted his parents as he could have a broken arm.
Right, good job.
Circumstances leading up to the injury.
That would just be John was playing on the monkey bars. Because you don't need to rewrite all of that again.
Yep.
Just the details have been provided on the front.
NA.
Mm-hmm.
NA. Broken bone,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be his right arm. Do I just circle?
We just circle, yeah, on both sides. So he's
Details of action taken. Brought child inside.
mm-hmm. And parents were contacted. If a bone or anything was sticking out, obviously in this scenario you'd call the ambulance.
Yeah.
'Cause it's obvious.
Yep.
But since we don't know if the arm's broken, we just notified the parents, and the parents can then decide if they'd like to take him to the hospital. And that's it.
Because family then fill this section out
Mm-hmm.
when they come to pick up John.
That's right. And then last scenario.
Mhm.
This one you'll do on your own as well,
Okay,
without my help.
Yep.
And then I'll read through it with you at the end.
no worries. A class of children are playing outside an education and care service. An educator within the classroom asks the children to come inside. Once all children are inside, they mark the roll to ensure all children have been accounted for. While the roll is being marked, they notice they can only count 19 children within the classroom when they're supposed to have 20. And when they call Sam's name, no child responds. An educator returns to the outdoor environment, but Sam cannot be found. They then notify the center director to inform them of the situation. Sam was last seen playing in the sand pit from afar, as no educator was supervising this space. Will this be an illness, incident, or accident? Accident.
No, that would be an incident.
An incident, sorry. Incident.
Yeah.
For this section, because the child's missing, there's no actual injuries and all that, would I just leave this section here
Yeah,
blank?
you would just put NA on the little dot.
And a little dot?
Yep, maybe NA and then a little line and say missing.
Same here, NA.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would I have known if there is emergency services being called for this just yet, or
Not just yet. That would happen after.
so would I leave that
You would
blank,
just
or would
leave
I
that.
just leave?
Leave that blank for now. Yeah.
Okay.
But once emergency services were there, you would then fill that out and
Okay.
say yes. Say they came at 12. It
Yep.
took them half an hour.
Okay. Have any assessment taken to prevent future?
You would say
Yes,
ensure
yes.
all areas within the yard are supervised at all times.
There you go.
Good job. Do you feel confident in writing reports?
Yes.
now? Yeah?
Yes, I do.
Do you have any questions or anything you'd like to follow up before
No.
we finish? No?
No.
Well, I'll see you next time.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.